Hi everyone, welcome back. Elden Ring is a game I've had conflicted feelings about, so join me as I give it one final playthrough to determine, do I hate Elden Ring? This video is a part of a series, so if you haven't seen it yet, you'll want to start with the first part. As a reminder, I'll be using Spirit Summons, but I'll be avoiding Black Knife Tiche and Mimic Tear unless I am truly stuck. I'll also be avoiding commonly considered broken tools like Hoarfrost Stomp, Moonveil, and Comet Azure. The goal is to see if I enjoy how the game plays, not if I can make a build to trivialize it. Last time I pushed my way through Raya Lucaria. This time around, I'm going to finish Liurnia of the Lakes to gear and level before I have to deal with any more legacy dungeons. With that, let's get back into it. First, I need to decide exactly where I'm going. Last time I was handling Liurnia, I mostly focused on the center and some of the left side of the map, so this time I decided to start with the right side. But to do that, I need to get to a connection between the different heights of the map. The paths meet up about halfway, but I stumble on a Spirit Spring before then, which puts me right next to a Grace. Spirit Springs are a little odd now that I think about it. There's not really a good in-universe reason for them. They're kind of just there in the same form wherever they pop up. They are obviously a gameplay concession, but I would rather have them than not. I see a tower in the distance, and I make that my goal for now. On the way there, I pass by another Tibia Mariner. I didn't think this would be a hard fight, but I ran past it to check for a nearby Grace in case things do go wrong. No luck on that, so I wheel around to start the fight. There are, of course, other enemies around the fight, including one that creates slow-moving projectiles, and that's where most of the hits I take in the first half of this fight come from. Most of the hits I take in the second half come from me getting stuck on terrain. My fault for trying to stay on Torrent. I should know better, really. I'm still going to complain about missing all my hits because I keep striking on the wrong side of Torrent. It's not really the game's fault, you can strike the other side with the left bumper, but man did it not feel good at the time. I just dismount to finish the fight. And the Mariner is still the best crowd control I have. And it's still an easy fight despite my own poor decision making. I get some Spirit Ashes and a Death Root for the trouble. Even better, I almost have enough runes for a level, and a few golden runes pushes me over. I increase my vigor to 29. I'm almost to 30, where I can start thinking about leveling other things as needed, but even past 30, I'll be leveling vigor if I have enough runes and don't otherwise have a plan for them. Nearby to where I rested is a knight that I vaguely remember dropping a decent faith spell. It doesn't attack too quick, when it does attack, the attacks are well telegraphed, and there's an engaging rhythm to the fight. There's just one problem. If I'm hit by a certain attack that has a lightning buff, it's a one-shot kill, and I'm sent back to the Grace. The second round I open up with a backstab, but it doesn't do nearly as much damage as I would have hoped. Add to that my attack missing because the knight took a small step forward, and the shield bash having an insane level of homing, and the fight switches from being engaging to being annoying. I'm also burning through my flask to make sure I'm always at full health. I'm trying to play defensively by keeping my shield up and having plenty of distance between me and the knight when I'm not attacking because the shield bash is delayed, and it's a pain to roll through. It works though, and I get the Dragon Cult Prayer Book for my victory, which is an even better drop than I was expecting whether I use the spells in it or not. I can't head to the tower just yet. I'm not on the same elevation as the entrance, so I have to go around. On my way, I stumble on an enemy outpost not too far away. The enemies here aren't super interesting and are dealt with quickly. What is exciting is the incantation I found. Flame Cleanse Me effectively completes the toolset I was looking for outside the main strength aspect of the build. Flame Cleanse Me is going to be a lifesaver in one particular area later. Along with Heal and Glintstone Pebble, I don't need to think about spells anymore. I can just focus on finding a good weapon and increasing vigor. I make it to the entrance of the tower, but before I deal with this, I warp back to the Church of Vows to hand in the prayer book and do some maintenance. I get the electric armament enhancement just in case it becomes useful later. I spend some golden runes, and I finally get my vigor to 30. Now it's just a question of whether I'm back on track to the scale of the environment or if I'm still lagging behind. Well, I'll just keep increasing vigor either way. Back to the tower, and I immediately jump to my death thinking I found a secret. I did not. Exploration comes at a price sometimes. Second attempt, and we see the first enemies for the area. Hands that I try to make a point to deal with at a distance because they can be surprisingly tanky and hard to read. Then there are the ghosts that will appear only when you're close enough. They almost guarantee you'll die at least once before you learn where they spawn. They're not why I hate this area, though. Does an enemy that can hit you with a homing attack from across the area sound fun? No? What if we make them teleport away as soon as you get close? Still no? Okay, we'll also surround them with mobs that spawn in when you get close to try to trick you into spending time fighting them instead of just rushing down the problem. and an AoE for when you get too close. Oh, and it can cast faster than you even if you get in range with a spellcaster, and there's little to no cooldown between them putting out an attack and teleporting away. Stop. I hate this. And right when you think you're done, it teleports into another room entirely. And there are more ghosts in that room too. I spent a solid minute or so just trying to figure out how I'm even supposed to approach this. I even paused in the middle of combat to add the Wraith Calling Bell to my equipment and give that a try. Instead of helping, it triggers the ghosts to spawn in, who get in the way and block my shots. I contemplate just leaving for a second when Miriam starts walking forward, and I book it to get some shots in. For some reason, Miriam doesn't teleport away, and that finishes that. Thank God. If you're pure magic, I hope you brought a backup weapon or carry-on slicer, otherwise, good luck. What an awful experience. I'm glad I got through this the first time through, but I was only able to do that because I already knew what was coming. Can't wait to come back and do it again. The rest of the enemies aren't any trouble on their own, just some remaining spirits and some rats on the rafters. My toolkit is fairly effective here, so I don't have to worry about any real danger. For my trouble, I get a talisman, which I'm probably not going to use, not great, but I also gain about enough experience for a level. While I'm sitting down, I also make sure to equip Flame Cleanse Me so I don't forget later, and swap out Catch Flame for Poison Mist. Catch Flame is just too close range for me to just not use my sword instead, but maybe something that has damage over time will be more useful. Back to exploring Liurnia, and I come across the Ainsel River. I'll come back to this because I know how deep this can end up going, but I get a message about server maintenance. I turn off the online component so I'm not kicked out or interrupted while I play, and I'll likely keep it off unless I'm stuck on a boss and need help. The only experience I'm really missing out on by doing this is invasions, which we've already seen that there are NPC invaders, so not much, really. Right past that is one of those magic face balls that fires magic into the air. I wander around it waiting for the other shoe to drop and a trap to spring, but nothing happens. Is this it? Well, it's a stationary target, so I try out Poison Mist on it. It doesn't do much, so it's back to just using the sword. That was rather anticlimactic. I check around the area to see if it was guarding something, and I notice that there are a bunch of bears that were probably supposed to be a part of the fight, but they just never got involved. Oh well. Nothing to keep me around here. I warp over to the Church of Vows to start continuing north from there. And that brings me to the Canyon of Minotaur Archers. I think they toned this down since the last time I played, and I'm grateful for it. It used to feel like a non-stop barrage of hard-to-dodge, high-damage arrows. Here I was able to run past them into the next grace pretty easily. My goal now is to make it to the Minor Erd Tree and get whatever's there. There's a bunch of Minotaurs that surround it. I fumble heavily and take plenty of hits trying to clear them out and protect my summon. This is the first time I'm fighting these things, but I'll be fighting plenty more, and they're always in large groups. This is getting really tiring. These games never really excel with fighting multiple things, so why do they always make me do it? By the time I'm dealing with 4 of them, I know this isn't going to go anywhere useful, so I just make the goal to clear them out. And then I try to bait out the Erd Tree Avatar to get the item past it. That doesn't go well. Next, we get the riveting gameplay of having to pick off each mob in the crowd one by one. Can't say I find this particularly fun, but I wouldn't be having fun being surrounded and overwhelmed. I'll just pick the poison most likely to lead to progression. Once they're out of the way, that just leaves the Erd Tree Avatar, and seeming to have learned from my last fight for once, it's not too bad. Keep the shield up, maintain distance, and jump the slam attack. I win without too much trouble and get a couple of tears for my effort. These things don't really have the wow factor I expect from bosses, and they've started to outstay their welcome, so I'll be grateful this only took me one try. I realize that I may have been forgetting something, so I head back to the Round Table Hold. Speaking with the Finger Reader Crone points me in the direction of the Erd Tree and some story fluff. But I've kind of lost investment in the story itself at this point, so I start skipping through the dialogue. Neither the Finger Reader Crone nor the Two Fingers are really interesting on their own. They have interesting lore, but that's not the same thing. I at least get a talisman pouch out of it, which is really what I was there for. With that, I warp back to Liurnia, this time to cover more of the west side. There's a lot of wandering and pressing myself to the edge before I can walk. I don't mind this. This isn't a part of the critical path forward, so anything I find here is strictly optional. I'm also looking for something in particular. I mentioned before that ranged summons could be engaging if used right, but I showed the Glintstone Sorcerer summon, which I don't think does a good job of showing that off. I think I find the path forward when I find the Lakeside Crystal Cave. I found this naturally last playthrough, and I'm kind of amazed I did. There's not too much to it, it's essentially like any other cave, but it has a nice mix of open areas and claustrophobic hallways that force you to adapt your playstyle. I use plenty of magic to push forward. Then there's the drop into the actual crystal part of the cave. I think this is the first time we've seen the snails here. They aren't much of an obstacle on their own, as long as you don't get greedy, and the spells they cast can be easily avoided. Then there's the boss. The Bloodhound Knight wasn't too bad either. It has some weird timings on some of the follow-up attacks, but none are instant kills, and most still give me time to get my shield up if I do fumble a roll. The lack of instant kills can probably be credited to me having fixed my vigor, but I thought this enemy also had a grab attack that it never tried to use, and likely would have changed my feeling on the fight. Or maybe I'm getting it mixed up with a similar enemy later? Either way, I beat the Bloodhound Knight without any trouble and get access to a talisman, and even better, what I was here for in the first place. Just past the Bloodhound Knight is Liurnia, who is a great range summon, possibly the best. Talking to her does nothing though, neither does resting and talking to her again. I must be missing something. How did I find these things naturally in both of my last playthroughs? It feels like I broke away from the path of progression somewhere along the way. Well, I know what I need to find for this, so I head out towards the Elden village. Nephile's there, so this will progress her questline as she sees a pile of corpses and regrets the unnecessary suffering. It gives me some conflicting feelings about killing my way further up the path. I'm still going to do it, it's not like they won't attack me on sight, and it'll later become clear that the ones that attack you are either not sane or part of the group who are hunting down the villagers. It's just odd. I find the one sane Albanorak and he gives me a little rundown on what happened with the village, and gives me a half of the Haligtree secret medallion. He also hints at its purpose to open up the consecrated snowfields. You just have to keep talking to him until he dies. You know, standard From dialogue. Before I head back to Liurnia with the secret medallion, I decide to take on the Omen Killer nearby. I summon the marionette soldiers and try to deal with the dogs first. The Omen Killer really doesn't give me time to do that though. Even though I'm able to clear the dogs out, it doesn't take long for me to lose my summons, and I'm not having a great time trying to dodge up a hill in a narrow path. But Nephili has a summon sign nearby, so I try to bring her in. Nephili basically solos the fight from there. I'll take it. I'm not a fan of this arena, and there was another dog that could have been dragged into the fight at any time. The Omen Killer's ability to put fire on the ground further reduced the amount of space I had to use. So we have another fight with a strong enemy in a small arena with a number of fast-moving mobs. This is becoming a well-worn pattern, and I'm not a fan. Nearby, there's a tower with not a lot of enemies around it, so I head there. You're supposed to use a gesture to get up it? From gives another option though. I climb the wall outside the tower and use Torrent to jump onto the landing. And I get a memory stone for the trouble. I probably won't need more spell slots, but it'll be nice to be able to expand if I do need it. Then I warp back to Liurnia. Now that I have the medallion, she's more willing to talk. It takes a couple of times. She needs to insult Gideon first. Fair enough. Then she mentions the Grand Lift of Rold, telling the player where to go for the Haligtree. I will probably not remember this by the time we get there, but at least I was told once, and I've been through it before. And finally, I have access to Liurnia as a summon. I warp back to the round table, and I'm hit with an NPC invasion. I'm well past the level where this would be any danger to me, but I'm conflicted about this. If a player can't overcome this, then they're gated from spirit ashes and shops they've been putting bell bearings into. They can still increase levels and weapons as long as they remember the anvil way back in the starting area. There probably should have been a couple more scattered around Limgrave if that was really planned to be the fallback. Although there is EG too. So a player that's stuck on this can grind their way up and come back to regain access to the hold. The fight's not that bad in the first place, I'm just questioning the loss of resources. It's weird tonally too. This isn't the first fight you can have in the hold, but you have to trigger that one intentionally. It helps emphasize the hold isn't necessarily a safe place to be, and this should be a dramatic consequence of discovering the Albanorak village. But that's if you head immediately back, and it's not like this ever comes back in a gameplay sense. There are no more fights in the hold as far as I know. I don't know, Insha only drops 114 runes, so maybe this just isn't ever a hard enough fight to have to worry about this at all. You might be surprised the first time, and the next round has to come after a loading screen. That would probably be the most frustrating part of it. Well, I've spent longer thinking about the fight than I actually spent on the fight, so moving on. If you haven't found Liurnia yet, but got the medallion from the Albanorak village, then Gideon guides you where she might be. Although Cave to the west is really rough and not quite right. but it's close enough to get a player started on finding her, I guess. While I'm at the hold, I upgrade some equipment, namely Liurnia and my shield. Then I hand off the Stormhawk I found to Nefeli. I mean, not right away. I have to talk to her then rest. But before that though, I figure if I beat Insha, I can probably beat the other fight in the hold, and I still haven't done that yet. The combination of frost magic and a fast weapon art makes this fight tricky, particularly if you try it as soon as you can. I decide that I'm better off starting the fight at range. Relying on magic works for a bit, but then they heal. Well, maybe this is another opportunity to try out Poison Mist. I get to work a few times, but ultimately finish the fight with the sword. Resting afterward, and Nefeli still doesn't want to talk to me. You have to talk to Gideon first. There's some good character writing with Nefeli as she grapples with Gideon being both her father figure and a horrible human being. I give her the hawk to help cheer her up, but this is probably as far as I'm taking this quest. To finish it, I would have to hunt down other quests in Limgrave and finish those as well. I'm not sure that I can do that without a wiki, so we'll put a pin in it for now. There's one last stop I want to make in Liurnia. The normal path to Carrion Manor has a rain of magic arrows that you have to dodge around. As long as you're on Torrent, it's not really troublesome, just enough pressure to make it feel like you're forcing your way into a place you aren't supposed to be. The Carrion Manor doesn't have anything we haven't seen before, aside from some of the hands being bigger or hidden in the ground as a trap. I do like how it's all put together though. Still, I'm not going to spend a lot of time fighting the basic enemies here. It won't be the last time we see any of them, so there's nothing really to be gained from it. So we'll move on to the boss of the area. I try to use Liurnia here, but she requires you to set her up in a decent area. I don't quite get it right, so I have to work double time to keep Loretta, no relation, from killing her. She does help me enough to bring Loretta down to almost a quarter of her health. Unfortunately, I can't keep aggro up, and Liurnia takes a full salvo of homing blades. Still, she more than justified using her in future fights. Now how about the fight with Loretta itself? I like this fight. Loretta, like the Red Wolf of Radagon, has a mix of magic and melee. Even Loretta's homing blade is similar to the Wolf's glintstone blade. The difference I find is that there's never a time when dodging one attack will leave you hit by another. I wish I could be sure that wasn't just luck, but at least in my experience, if you have to dodge another attack when the homing blades fire, you're likely to dodge those too. It also feels like you have more control of the range you're going to engage in. Being far away will result in more magic attacks, which can hit really hard, but are easier to dodge. It's easy to earn space to heal if you need it, or you can swap between distances to bait out big attacks and punish them. This is good. I like this. There's another fight with the dragon right past Loretta. I think this could have used some space. It makes sense in lore, the dragon is essentially Ranni's pet, but I'm not sure it's a great fight to put just after we've already had a boss. I might be more forgiving if it was more unique, but at least you only have to bring it to half health. Once that's out of the way, we can meet Ranni. I actually stumble on the hidden puppet den first by accident, but there's not really anything to do with it right now. Meeting Ranni for real, and she wants to know why I'm there. Which is a good question, but I don't plan too far ahead, so I'm kind of just here. Well, I agree to enter her service, starting the path to the Age of Stars ending. Not only is this, I feel, the best ending, but it also is the best quest in the game, taking you to the most interesting areas while being the most straightforward to follow. The Age of Stars is the most common ending, and I get why. Before progressing, we have to get some introductions out of the way. Iji and Blade are decent enough, and Blade points to our next location. But I was getting a little tired of just standing there being talked at by Celavis. He's there to clue you in on the fact that Ranni isn't exactly a good person, and she's been playing politics in the lands between long before you showed up. But he doesn't have to be a jerk about it. With that out of the way, we have one more talk with Ranni, where she says she's about to enter a long slumber, and I'm about to follow suit. At this point, Liurnia doesn't really have anything that makes it stand out for me. I like the Carrion Manor, and the west side of it in general, but the east side has Miriam, and I could do without that. In between, there were a lot of long stretches of just running on Torrent. I suppose we can still keep the rating for this area as mixed, but more towards positive. This brings us to the end of Liurnia. Next time we'll take a short sojourn to the Sofria Riverwell, and then it's on to Caelid. Thanks again for watching my video. How did you meet Ranni the first time? Was it by the church, or did you not find her until the manor? Or did you never find her in the playthrough? Let me know in the comments. Remember to subscribe to be updated when I release a new video. If you want to support the making of these videos and other video game critiques, check out my Patreon. All my videos are put up on Patreon ad-free, and $10 patrons will get a shout out at the end of the next video. See you all next time!